Hello, book lovers. Welcome back to another book review. Thank you for tuning in. Sorry, excuse me. So, what does it mean to feel? What if you couldn't experience emotions the way most people do? How would the world treat you? Almond by Sohn Won-pyung. So, Almond by Sohn Won-pyung is a coming of age novel that explores neurodiversity, isolation, and resilience in a world that often demands conformity. A bestseller in Korea and now a global phenomenon. This novel takes us deep into the mind of a young boy who sees the world differently. So let's get started. So today's book is Almond by Sohn Won-pyung, translated by Sandy Juson E. It was published in English in 2020. And so recently I reviewed the novel The Silence of Bones. Silence of Bones is a Korean set young adult novel published in English. And when I was reviewing that book, I noted that while YA, young adult, is a huge publishing category in Britain and America, it might not be quite as popular in the same way here in Korea. However, Almond was marketed in Korea as a YA book, and it was also a massive bestseller. So it was published in 2017 in Korea, became a bestseller, sold over 250,000 copies, won the Changbi Prize for Young Adult Fiction the same year. And then very quickly, publication rights were sold to at least 10 other countries. And when the English translation was published in 2020, it was much anticipated. So, a huge achievement for a debut novel by anyone's standards. And Almond is a coming of age story set in contemporary Korea, set in Seoul. It's about a young boy called Yoon-jae who is raised by his single mother. So dad isn't around. It's just Yoon-jae and mom and grandmother. And as an elementary school student, Yoon-jae is diagnosed with Alexithymia. And this is a brain condition that means that he doesn't experience emotions the same way as most other people. And there's a newsletter, website newsletter magazine called K Book Trends. And Son was interviewed in K Book Trends, and she said, and Son says that Almond is a coming of age story that features an emotionless boy, Yoon-jae, who undergoes a series of incidents and meets various people which eventually change him and make him grow up. And that interview is very interesting, actually. So if you go to the K Book Trend website, you search for Almond or Sohn Won-pyung, you'll be able to find that full interview. And that's a good description of the story. So what happens after he's diagnosed with this condition is his mother tries to teach him how to react to people. So how to get by in the world so that maybe people won't notice that he's different, and he won't be singled out, or he won't be bullied, or he won't be treated differently, or he'll be able to cope and manage and survive in the world. But at some point later, when he's a teenager, an incident happens. I don't want to give too much away, but an incident occurs that means he is forced to make his way in the world by himself. And the novel tells us the story of how he struggles to get by and make a fulfilling life for himself whilst dealing or whilst having this condition. So, what kind of problems does Yoon-jae encounter as he tries to make his way through society, and how does Son depict his neurological condition? So, in the past decade or so, this idea of neurodiversity has become more visible and increasingly talked about and increasingly engaged with. Um, and the non-neurotypical people are not looked at as needing to be cured of their condition. Instead, their autonomy should be recognized and accepted. And this was initially applied to conditions such as autism, dyslexia, Tourette's, and various others. And it has become increasingly visible. We might look at someone like Greta Thunberg as an example of this. And she gave a TED talk in Stockholm in 2019, 2020. And she said, I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, OCD, and selective mutism. That basically means I only speak when I think it's necessary. And Almond is very much a story about a non-neurotypical individual and the various problems they encounter. Because despite the training that Yunjae receives from his mother, it doesn't take long for the other school kids to realize that he doesn't react appropriately. He doesn't react the same way that most people would to most situations. So he's bullied, he becomes isolated, and at times he struggles. So what is this coaching that he receives from his mother? How and what does this coaching tell us about what is considered to be normal or appropriate? So one of the strengths of the novel is how Son writes about the coaching he receives from his mother. So to give you a small taste, she creates a human emotion game where she tells Yunjae a situation, she describes a situation, and he has to guess the appropriate response. So things that perhaps most of us take for granted, just ways of acting and and behaving that we're socialized into, and that Yunji just doesn't understand. So, for example, she asks, what do you do when someone hurts you? What are the correct emotions when someone gives you tasty food? And so on. And so Yunji has to learn the appropriate responses or reactions to these type of situations. And Yunjae's mother, her primary desire is to make him appear like a normal person, because she knows how unforgiving society can be for those who are not perceived as normal. And Son does a great job of putting us inside Yunjae's head through these experiences. And the power of this, partly, is that it lets us see ourselves and see our society anew, and at the same time gives us some understanding of a different way of thinking and approaching the world. And when I read this book back in 2020, around the same time, I'd read a Malcolm Gladwell book called Talking to Strangers. And in that book, he talks about the idea that we are terrible at interpreting the nature of people we meet. We think we're much better at, analyzing someone's personality or intentions or character, but actually we're dreadful. And he says that one, we're terrible at judging whether people are lying. We think, or lots of us think, that we're good at knowing when someone is lying, but we're not. And two, we're also terrible at knowing when someone is truthfully sharing themselves. And so we often think we're much better at these things than we really are. And Yunjae doesn't have this. He knows that he is. He's not. He doesn't have these sort of blinkers on his perception. He doesn't have this frame or filter. He's just seeing people without thinking in the same way that someone else might think, that you are accurately judging. He knows he has to try and sort of judge them fresh every time he meets them, and because of this, he has a different view of the nature of interactions, and through his eyes, we can see that perhaps some common beliefs are wrong or are strange when we sort of look at them with fresh eyes. So who would I recommend this book to? So it was marketed as a young adult book in Korea, won a young adult prize. And as Sohn says in that K-Book Trends interview, she says, sorry, but the happiest comments I hear are parents saying that their children who would just not read the books sat down and read through the book without a break. I hope that Almond serves as an opportunity for teenagers to find an interest in books. It is because there are just so many good books in the world, and good books change lives and their world. And she's right. So it's great that this book is connecting with teenagers. It also became quite famous because one of the members of BTS, don't ask me who, recommended this book, or there was a paparazzi photograph of one of them reading this book somewhere, which I think was enormously good publicity for it. But anyway, it's absolutely not just a book for teenagers or young adults. Sohn is a talented writer, and she quite skillfully does some difficult things with the voice of this book, Yoonjae's voice. It's an engaging book. There's good characters and some strong writing, and it deserved I think it deserved all of the success it had. And Sohn actually has her second novel, or one of her other novels. The English translation is out quite soon, so I'll try and review that sometime soon as well. Interestingly, when this book was published, it was also the latest in a series of Korean novels that had a non-neurotypical central character. So why was there this rash of Korean translated fiction with non-neurotypical central characters? Very interesting question. And honestly, I'm not sure there's a single clear answer, but it's definitely worth thinking about. So Almond wasn't alone. It shared some thematic DNA with some other Korean novels, most of which I think I've already reviewed on the channel. So The Good Son by Chong Yu-jong, The Only Child by Mi Ae-seo, and The Boy Who Escaped Paradise by J.M. Lee. Each of these books centers on a protagonist who experiences the world in a neurologically different way. So whether it's through psychopathy or emotional detachment or some other unique way of processing reality. Of course, all those authors, Chong Yu-jong, J.M. Lee, Sohn, Mi Ae-seo, they're all doing very different things. One of those novels is a horror. One of them is kind of a thriller. One of them is a crime thriller. Well, a couple of them are crime thrillers. One of them is a crime thriller horror. And Almond is a coming of age story. So they're all doing different things. There are some explore neurodivergence in the context of crime or thrillers, or like Almond is more introspective and a little bit more literary, maybe. But the common thread is that these books challenge conventional ways of understanding emotion, morality, and human connection. And so maybe part of the reason we're seeing more of these characters in Korean fiction as that they serve as a lens to examine broader social issues, such as isolation or pressure to conform, or even the way emotions are controlled or expected in highly structured environments. It's an interesting trend. I can't think of any other examples that have been published. There was like this little, that little mini genre of those 4 or 5 books I just mentioned. Can't think of any other examples off the top of my head. If you can think of any more that I've missed, please leave a comment and let me know. But should you read Almond? So yes, if you enjoy literary coming-of-age stories with a fresh perspective, if you're interested in neurodivergent protagonists in psychology, or if you want a deeply emotional read without too much sentimentality, then yes. And if you like books like The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, as the one this always makes me think of, then yes, I absolutely think you should pick up Almond. So what do you think? Should more books explore neurodiversity and different ways of experiencing the world? If you read Almond, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like the video, or if you liked it, that is, and subscribe for more book reviews, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. And as always, thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next video.